I'm pretty sure that this video was requested, but I can't really remember. Anyways, let's take a look.
In the 1880s, a man by the name of George Walser decided that he was going to do something very novel. He decided that he was going to establish a city. It was going to boast of pure atheism. You see, there weren't going to be any people who believed in God in the city. He was going to found the city that he was going to name Liberal, Missouri, on the understanding or the idea that everyone in this city is an atheist, that there is no God, no church, no heaven, no hell, nothing of a religious nature is going to be allowed in this particular city.
But he actually failed. When he established this city, many Christians soon came in as missionaries and such, and established their own city nearby called Pedro, which eventually became united with Liberal. And according to the Joplin Globe, there were many deists and spiritualists. It was by no means purely atheistic, especially after they got churches.
Well, in 1880, when he started Liberal, Missouri, there were about 300 people in the town. And what quickly emerged was that the town was filled with thieves, with liars, with drunkards, with people that you would not want to associate with on a regular basis. And a man by the name of Clark Braden went to visit Liberal, Missouri. And Clark Braden was a debater. He had involved himself in something like 120 different debates. He had delivered over 3,000 lectures or so. He spoke on the Christian principles as found in the New Testament. And he visited Liberal, Missouri, and then he wrote an article describing what was happening in the town of Liberal, Missouri. And in this article, Clark Braden proceeded to describe what was happening in Liberal. As you read it, he talks about how all of the women and men used bad language, used curse words. He said even the children cursed on a regular basis. He said habitually. He said there was an attitude of irreverence from the children to the parents. He said the hotels were like brothels. It was a place that no decent person would want to visit. And of course, he blamed that on the atheistic ideology that was the foundation of the city.
I'm not exactly sure how true this is, because the guy he's citing clearly has a bias against the town. However, in his book, The Story of Liberal, Missouri, O.E. Harmon states that there was a coal mine near Liberal, and there were many farms, which that would bring money into the town, but I doubt that the farm workers and coal miners were very well paid. And I believe that economic status would have more to do with this than would its atheistic founding. I mean, seriously, why is religiosity the only possible variable that could have caused this? And according to Walser, Pedro, the next door city that was founded on Christianity, was actually worse than Liberal, and Christians rathered Liberal than Pedro because Pedro had a problem with drunkenness. Now, I don't believe either story, but this is just as credible as what you're presenting here.
Well, they sued Clark Braden very quickly for criminal libel and slander. And of course, very quickly after the situation was apprised, they realized that Clark Braden was saying exactly what was right, and the criminal investigation and court case was dropped. Clark Braden was totally exonerated of any criminal charges. But then he was sued on a civil suit for $25,000 by one of the hotel owners. And the hotel owner was trying to sue him civilly for libel and slander, but quickly when he realized what Clark Braden was going to do and the evidence that he was going to present that showed that the hotels were nothing more than brothels, the court case civilly was dropped, and the man who sued him paid all of the court costs. Clark Braden had hit the nail on the head.
I messed up while recording this, so you're gonna have to deal with this for a minute. But this video was made by, or at least made in conjunction with, Apologetics Press. And they have this article on their website, which essentially says everything that he's said up until this point. When it talks about these lawsuits, it only cites two sources. Mouton, who is a Christian who wrote about these things from a Christian perspective, i.e. with a bias. And it also cites the court case Thayer v. Braden, which I could not find any information about, although I'm not sure how I would go about finding information about a court case from 1885. But my point is, this is a Christian citing a Christian source, so obviously this whole thing is going to be very biased, and I see no reason why I should believe that this is why these court cases were dropped. There's no indication that these things are true, especially not in the way that you say that it is.
You see, liberal Missouri was a failed experiment. Oh, it wasn't a failed experiment of what would happen if you actually got a bunch of atheists together, because it showed exactly what would happen if there were a group of people, that got together that really truly did believe that there was no God, and really truly believed that there is no standard for moral conduct. That's what would happen. But it was a failed experiment in that they set out to establish a town that was made up of upstanding, solid citizens of the country, and they could not do it because the foundation of their town was terminally flawed. That foundation being atheism.
Actually, it failed as an experiment as well, because anybody who knows anything about experiments should know that experiments test one variable against a control, while there were many different variables in liberal Missouri that could have led to the misconduct of its citizens. Again, economic status was a very big part of this, which in the year 2000, which we get the population of 779 from, the median income for a family was around $30,000 a year, and the per capita income was around $11,000 a year. That's bad. And again, not everybody in this town was an atheist. I mean, to this day, there is a Christian church named Christian Church right in the middle of liberal Missouri. These are key bits of information that you're conveniently leaving out. But even if that wasn't the case, even if your reasoning was flawless and atheism does actually lead to such misconduct, that doesn't mean that atheism is wrong or unreasonable. People can be right about something and still be an asshole.
We need to assess the idea of atheism and the idea of Christianity in this particular lesson. And we need to see just where those two ideas would take a person if they really acted on their belief in those ideas.
No, because that's not how this works. See, the title of this video is The Fruits of Atheism, which is a reference to the idea that you should judge them by their fruits, which is a biblical concept that if a tree only bears bad fruits, then you can deduce that the tree is a bad tree and needs to be cut down. Likewise, if a tree only bears good fruit, then it is a good tree. And the idea is that we judge people by their actions in the same way, which is, of course, a false analogy. People can have good and correct ideas and be bad at applying them. They could also be apathetic. There could be more to their behavior than just what you can see superficially. Or there could also be other variables at play that contribute to their behavior. But this does effectively allow Christians to admire ideas that they like and condemn ideas that they don't like by cherry-picking examples of people who hold those ideas, which is exactly what we're watching here in glorious 480p.
I want you to read a quote from a man named Bertrand Russell. At one time, Bertrand Russell was recognized as the foremost agnostic and sometimes atheistic, he swapped between the two, thinkers of his day.
Now, I'd like to pause here, because while I'm not an expert on Russell, I'm pretty sure he's mischaracterizing him. He was not switching between agnostic and atheist. He was both. He was an agnostic atheist. He was an atheist because he lacked a belief in a deity. but he was agnostic because he understood that you could not disprove the idea of an ethereal God. And this is a concept that tons of atheists, perhaps most atheists, including myself, hold. It's not because we're confused about what we do or don't believe, it's because we have a different understanding of the definitions of those words than you do.
But he says this. He says, in a new form, it passed over modern liberalism and remains the inspiration of much that is most hopeful in our somber world. Mr. Russell, do you believe that there's evidence to prove that Christianity is the truth? No, certainly not. Do you believe there's evidence to prove that God exists and that He inspired the New Testament? No, certainly not. Mr. Russell, do you believe that Christianity is the inspiration behind what is most hopeful in our somber world? Yes. Yes, I do.
So, of course, it only makes sense to abandon our logical faculties to accept this idea because it makes us feel good. We accept this idea that will make us prejudiced against homosexuals, the divorced, and non-believers. We believe myths and mythological creatures, magic, demons, and miracles, for no defensible reason other than that we can use it as a coping mechanism. Is that what you're saying? Does it not occur to you that atheists aren't always assholes, and that people's behavior isn't affected solely by their philosophies or religiosity? In fact, social learning has far more to do with people's behavior than anything else. If somebody is nice, polite, and cheerful, it's not because they're a good Christian. It's because they're used to an environment where that is the norm. Likewise, if somebody is rude, vulgar, or morose, it's not because he lacks belief, but it has more to do with social learning or mental disorders. Those are a factor as well. I mean, I'm an atheist, and I like to think of myself as respectful and respectable, which, whether you believe that or not, is up to you. But when I was a Christian, I was the most depressed that I have ever been. Now, that had absolutely nothing to do with Christianity, but that doesn't seem to matter here, because we're just judging these ideas by their fruits, notwithstanding the fact that these fruits have a complex relationship with many different factors.